What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Speed Culture Studios. Thank you very much for stopping in. Now, I really appreciate everyone's engagement with all the videos on YouTube and on Instagram as well. And I get a lot of questions, which I appreciate very much, and I'm happy to address and answer as I can. One of the most common questions that I get, especially lately, is from people looking to purchase a Q50, and oftentimes they're asking about reliability. So I just want to talk a little bit today over some videos, of course, some clips and photos here and there about reliability. So I have about 44,000 miles on this car currently, and in the words of Michael Scott, I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. So I'm going to avoid as much as I possibly can talking about this car specifically. But just let's just go right for it, huh? Now, just on the very, very surface of this discussion, Nissan Infiniti has done a fantastic job over the last, nearly 2 decades, establishing a track record of success built on longevity, reliability, and durability, basically, of this VQ37 engine. So just like I said, at the very, very top, the very surface of this discussion, we know going into it that this engine, this platform, is very much so tried and true. It's been tested for many, many years, and there are a number of stories out there and a number of people willing to say that they have driven this car for 50, 60, 80, 100,000 miles, 200,000 miles on some of these G cars, abusing it over and over and over again at the track or on the street, and still the car does not skip a beat. One thing that we do have to consider, though, as well, and it's not just for this car, it's any car, is that reliability is all relative. And it's all relative to how we treat the cars, not just maintenance-wise, but if we're modifying these cars. If you modify any car, a Mustang, a Corvette, a Q50, a Ferrari, whatever the case may be, if you're changing things like suspension geometry, you're doing anything to the engine in terms of intake, cams, different fuels, if you're opening up the exhaust, whatever the case may be, if you're changing the specifications of the car, you have to consider the fact that there may be issues either immediately or down the line. The other thing, too, with modifications is that when we increase the horsepower of the car, obviously there's more strain on the vehicle, but naturally we tend to drive these cars a little bit harder. We're more aggressive on our accelerations, we're more aggressive on our braking. We might take the car to the track here and there, or we might push it aggressively on the mountain roads. Whatever the case may be, we generally abuse the car a little bit harder than we would if the car was completely stock. So that all lends to whether the car remains reliable over a long period of time or not. Another thing, obviously, is maintenance. Again, this goes to any car, stock or modified significantly. Changing your fluids regularly, checking your fluid levels, watching changing the rear diff fluid, the transfer case fluid if you're all-wheel drive, your blinker fluid and your muffler bearings, keeping everything in tip-top shape is going to really help preserve the life of your vehicle. So I would definitely say that, again, Nissan Infiniti has done a great job establishing the VQ37 as a really solid, durable, reliable platform, even up into the higher mileage. Again, maintenance is going to be key, and just maintaining your vehicle and keeping an eye on everything that's going on, and making adjustments as necessary. That's going to help with longevity. So from an engine standpoint specifically, going with a G car or a Q50 with the 37, I would say worries compared to other vehicles on the road are minimal. One thing we could talk about, though, is this 7-speed transmission. We know that once we start increasing horsepower significantly, getting up over the 350, 400 foot-pounds of torque. Horsepower, not so much the issue. Torque is a transmission killer, as everyone generally knows. But once we start pushing those levels with forced induction, the transmission becomes a weak point. But in stock form, or a full bolt-on setup, there's really not a whole lot to worry about, knock on wood. So there are a couple of other things that I've come across in terms of reliability for the VQ37, but they do not seem to be all that common, nor do they seem to be that serious. For example, now this isn't a dig. This isn't a dig or a joke at the 3.0T, but the VQ37 does not seem to have belt issues unless the car is driven forever without the belt being changed. And that just comes down to a preventative maintenance type situation. Again, not a dig at the 3.0T, but you know, there have been some folks that experience some belt issues caused by a pulley misalignment or something like that. Another thing has been generally dealing with sensors, maybe a throttle position sensor issue or O2 sensors going out causing the car to go into a limp mode. Situations like that can leave people stranded on the side of the road or limping home and having to diagnose issues. But again, not all that serious. The other thing that I've seen, and it seems even more rare than sensors, is bad ground, which causes the car to either go into limp mode, like not being able to accelerate past a certain RPM, or the car just leaving them stranded on the road, essentially. But more often than not, it seems to be a case where you just shut the car off and turn it back on and it's good to go. But again, that should just maybe be something you are, paying attention to as you do regular maintenances. Just check your ground points and make sure everything is clipped in and everything is connected tight. There's a lot of sensors, there's a lot of wires, and there's a lot of stuff under the hood. So making sure there's connections made and everything is solid is key. Well, there are a couple things that we don't necessarily consider reliability issues, but just some of your typical things that pop up as you put miles on your car. And this, again, is true for any car, but a couple of things that are specific to the Q50 that you might want to take into consideration for being a relatively expensive, luxury type sedan. After about 40,000 miles, some of these door panels start to get some rattles. Your center console starts to get a couple of rattles here and there. The glove box might have a couple vibrating noises coming from it as you're accelerating or going down the interstate. But again, this is kind of the nature of the beast in owning a vehicle. Once you start getting 35, 40, 50,000 miles on it, especially if you're beating on the car on a regular basis, things start to loosen up. And again, the more you mess with things, the more you're taking things apart and putting them back together, you're bound to get some joints and connections that aren't quite together the way they were from the factory. So a couple of things to consider. All in all, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend or purchase a car with this VQ37. It's overall a really solid, reliable platform, like I said at the beginning. But with anything, maintenance is key. So if you're out in the market looking for a car like this, if you're shopping Q50s or G cars, just take a look at the overall condition. Obviously, it's difficult to see what's going on in the internals, but if the car's not smoking, if the car's not leaking oil, if it's not making any crazy weird noises, you're probably pretty safe. I still am a bit hesitant to talk about my car specifically, but I will say after 44,000 miles or so, I am still super pleased with the car. I enjoy driving it as much as I possibly can, and that's really all I'll say. Hopefully, that gives you a good impression. But like always, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I will certainly get to them as quickly as I possibly can. Thank you very, very much for watching, and I really appreciate all of your support. We'll see you in the next video.